The question of why human beings choose evil over good is not a question of morality, but a question of psychological depth. Carl Jung famously stated, "No tree," it is said, "can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." This suggests that the capacity for what we call evil is not an external force that possesses us, but an inherent, latent part of the human architecture. We often choose evil because it is the path of least resistance for an unexamined psyche. Choosing the good requires the constant, conscious integration of our darker impulses, a process Jung called individuation, whereas falling into evil is simply the act of letting the shadow take the driver's seat. We choose evil when we are too afraid, too lazy, or too fractured to face the monster within, and so we let the monster act through us. The primary driver for choosing evil is the repression of the shadow. The shadow is the dark side of the personality, consisting of all the traits, urges, and desires that we find socially unacceptable or personally shameful. When a person tries to be perfectly good without acknowledging their capacity for harm, they don't actually become good. They simply push their darkness into the basement of the unconscious. There, it ferments and gains autonomy. Eventually, this repressed energy must find an outlet. It manifests as projection, where we see our own hidden evil in the other, the enemy, the rival, or the outsider. Choosing evil, in this context, is often a subconscious attempt to destroy in others what we cannot face in ourselves. It feels righteous, which is the most dangerous form of malevolence. Furthermore, evil is often chosen because it provides an immediate, intoxicating sense of power. To do good is a slow, gardening process. It requires patient sacrifice and the building of order out of chaos. To do evil is a shortcut to significance. Destroying something beautiful or causing pain gives a fractured ego an instant feeling of agency in a world that feels indifferent. For the man who feels small, resentful, or ignored, the choice of evil is an attempt to leave a mark on the world. As Jung observed, the spirit of evil is the fear of being nothing. When a man cannot find meaning through creation, he will inevitably seek it through destruction, because destruction is the only other way to prove that he exists. There is also the allure of aesthetic nihilism. Modern psychology notes that when a person loses their telos or their ultimate purpose, they fall into a state of chronic boredom and spiritual emptiness. In this vacuum, goodness feels bland and restrictive, while evil feels vibrant, rebellious, and real. This is a tragedy of the human condition. We are often bored by paradise and fascinated by the abyss. We choose evil because it offers a break from the burden of being nice. It is the thrill of the transgressive. Without a deep internal moral compass that is forged in fire of self-awareness, human beings will choose the interesting evil over the boring good every single time. We must also consider the psychology of resentment. Every time a man fails to live up to his potential, or every time he is treated unfairly by life, he has a choice. He can integrate the pain and grow, or he can nurse a grudge against existence itself. Resentment is the primary fuel for human evil. It is a Cain archetype, the brother who kills a successful one because he cannot stand the light of the other's merit. When a man is consumed by resentment, he doesn't just want to hurt people. He wants to hurt the creator of the world. He chooses evil as a form of cosmic revenge. He wants to prove that the world is a dark, broken place because that justifies his own failure to be light. Finally, we choose evil because of the comfort of the group. Collectivism is a breeding ground for the shadow. Jung warned that the mass man is capable of atrocities that the individual would never dream of. When we submerge our individual conscience into a group identity, we outsource our morality. We choose the evil of the mob because it relieves us of the terrifying responsibility of our own choices. It is easier to be a demon in a legion than it is to be a saint in the desert. To choose good is to stand alone. To choose evil is often to be part of a roaring, unified force that promises safety through the destruction of a common enemy. Ultimately, the choice of evil is a failure of the will to wholeness. It is the choice of the part over the whole. It is the ego trying to survive at the expense of the soul. To stop choosing evil, a man must stop pretending he is good. He must admit that he is capable of every horror imaginable. Only when he has looked into the abyss of his own heart and mastered the dragons he finds there can he truly be called good. Everything else is just harmlessness born of fear. True goodness is a choice made by a man who knows exactly how evil he can be, but chooses to hold the sword in its sheath. The choice of evil over good is often a choice for the psychological shortcut. To do good is to be an architect of order, which is a slow, grueling process of discipline, sacrifice, and a continuous refinement of one's character. To do evil, however, is to be an architect of chaos, which offers an immediate and intoxicating sense of power. Carl Jung observed that modern man has become profoundly alienated from his own roots, leading to a state where the ego feels small and insignificant. In this state of perceived powerlessness, malevolence becomes an attractive tool for gaining agency. Destroying something that took years to build provides a fractured ego with an instant feeling of impact. For the man who feels ignored by the world, burning the world down is the only way he feels he can truly participate in it. This dynamic is fueled by what Friedrich Nietzsche and later psychologists identified as ressentiment, a deep-seated resentment that grows when a person feels unable to cope with life's challenges. When you feel inadequate, you have two choices. You can take on the burden of self-improvement, which is painful and requires admitting your flaws, or you can decide that the system, the world, or the good itself is corrupt. People choose evil because it provides a moral justification for their failures. By labeling the good as fake or oppressive, they grant themselves permission to act out their bitterness. Evil, in this sense, is the revenge of the unsuccessful against the successful, and the revenge of the stagnant against the growing. Furthermore, evil is chosen because it offers a relief from the tension of opposites. Jung argued that a healthy psyche is one that can hold the tension between its light and dark sides without collapsing into either. However, holding this tension is psychologically exhausting. It requires constant self-awareness and moral heavy lifting. Many people choose evil simply because they are tired of the struggle. Surrendering to their lowest impulses, greed, rage, or cruelty, feels like a release. It is a downward slide into the unconscious, a regression into a more primitive state, where the rules of civilization no longer apply. This is the banalization of evil. It is not always a grand, cinematic choice, but often a series of small, lazy surrenders to the path of least resistance. We must also consider the seduction of nihilism. When a society loses its central myth or its sense of higher purpose, individuals find themselves in a vacuum of meaning. In this vacuum, the traditional concepts of good begin to look like hollow platitudes. Evil, by contrast, feels authentic because it is visceral and raw. This is the Byronic hero, or the villain archetype that modern culture often finds more fascinating than the saint. People choose a destructive path because they are bored by a goodness that lacks teeth. They mistake cruelty for strength and chaos for freedom. Without a deep internal vision of the sublime good, the psyche will naturally gravitate toward the interesting evil. The choice is also deeply connected to the inversion of values. In a state of psychological decay, the psyche begins to see the good as a threat. The existence of someone truly virtuous acts as a mirror that reflects one's own deficiencies. To avoid the pain of this reflection, the person must kill the mirror. They must mock, undermine, or destroy the good to prove that it isn't real. This is why the crowd often cheers for the downfall of a hero. By dragging the hero down into the mud, the crowd validates its own mediocrity. Choosing evil becomes a defensive maneuver to protect the ego from the crushing weight of its own unfulfilled potential. Finally, the choice of evil is a rejection of radical responsibility. To choose the good is to accept that you are responsible for your own life and the well-being of those around you. To choose evil is to declare yourself a victim of fate, biology, or society. By adopting the role of the predator or the vengeful victim, a man excuses himself in the hard work of building a legacy. He trades the long-term fulfillment of a life well-lived for the short-term high of an act of defiance. Ultimately, choosing evil over good is the ultimate act of psychological cowardice. It is a refusal to face the dragon of one's own life, choosing instead to become the dragon and consume everything in sight.